Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our 72nd episode of Exposing Imperial Decline. There's a lot of imperial decline to expose today. Imperial decline is catching traction. We've got a clip of Boris Johnson, agreeing that, there is some serious decline going on. And who does he blame? He blames the empire itself. So he blames himself and the West. But let me introduce and thank Ben Toth from Paich, Hungary for joining us, Ian Kummer from a suburb in Moscow, and Carlo Parcelli from Washington, D.C. So thank you guys, as always, for joining me. The title of our episode is Hegemony of West Ends, and that's a quote from Boris Johnson. And let's go ahead and just play that clip if we can. That'll get us started.
With Ukrainian cities once again being pounded to rubble and the casualties mounting, I'm afraid I have to ask once again, why the hell are we being so slow in giving those heroic Ukrainians the weapons they so desperately need? Because if Ukraine falls, it will be a catastrophe for the West. It will be the end of Western hegemony, and we will have no one to blame but ourselves. Read my column in the Daily Mail.
In his own words. And for once, Mr. Weirdhair, I don't think he's wrong. What do you guys think?
I feel like he looks more disheveled in each video. Like if you ran like 5 years of Boris Johnson clips, selected Boris Johnson clips back to back, I feel like he'd be like gradually getting worse with each one. Like it's.
We were in agreement before the show that he probably spends a lot of money and a lot of time to get that disheveled look. I don't think that's organic. I think that look takes a lot of money and effort. I would bet a lot that that's true. But
yeah, probably. Yeah, lots of pounds spent on a stylist to look like he doesn't care about his hair.
Yeah.
It's Tory bedhead, but he did say something that's really true. The last statement, we are responsible for what happened. He in particular is responsible because he was the emissary that went over there and scotched the peace plan. I believe it was the one that was
2 years ago
in Istanbul. And this is why the war is carrying on, and tens of thousands of people are dying, and the blood is on his hands. He did say something finally truthful, and the blood is on his hands. So
damn right. And I hope he's feeling the noose tighten. Well, I don't know if it's just for camera, but let me add a second very quick video clip from, I don't know who's degrading faster, Boris Johnson, Zelensky, or this guy, the Norwegian piece of wood, as Pepe Escobar calls him. And about the Patriots, he had this to say in Europe.
But Ukraine needs even more. That is why if allies face a choice between meeting NATO capability targets and providing more aid to Ukraine, my message is clear. Send more to Ukraine. Denmark is a strong example, providing all of their artillery to the Ukrainians, but also with clear plans in place to replenish national stocks.
I mean, sorry about that. I think I removed and re-added Billy Bob, but yeah, that's. I mean, demilitarizing NATO is what that sounds like. And I think I shared with you this article that came out somewhere, which for the first time, I think, named the actual time frame and the actual cost of one of these systems with 7 or 8 batteries. And in this article, it was like, I think Switzerland, someone ordered some Patriots like 2 years ago. That would be 2022. And it will take 6 more years to get the first one and another year to put it into practice. And without interceptors, it will still cost about $1 billion for that one unit. And apparently he wants just everybody to send everything, whatever you've got, just demilitarize the west of Europe. And that's, I think, what's scaring a lot of people now.
And the other thing is this $61 billion in aid coming from the U.S., it's not going to be immediately utile to the Ukrainians. Most of it's not going to arrive for months, and much of it's not going to arrive for years. So what's the point? The point is to just enrich the U.S. military-industrial complex, which a number of politicians in the U.S. have made very, very clear. That's one of the selling points of it. They're so desperate. They're saying, look, that's $61 billion. That's coming right back to us. Another truth that's been hidden for years. So.
Yeah, true enough. Kaya Kalas made the same point. Do you want to talk about what's going on in apparently this weekend is when it's going to be put for a vote on separate, what do you call these supplemental bills? The aid for Israel, the aid for Ukraine. And it's wonderful. Mike Johnson has been bought like 180%. He's with the Democrats now. Apparently there's an uproar from Marjorie Taylor Greene and other people.
Ian, what do you think about this narrative that says, Ukraine is struggling because the West hasn't passed this 60 billion aid package? Like,
I think
you think there's any truth to that?
It's BS. It's total BS. I mean, because it's what they need is, at least on the military side, what they need is more ammunition, more missiles, more weapons. There's nothing preventing the Pentagon from just sending everything they have to Ukraine. I don't think that's been interrupted at all. So the 60 billion, that's just additional. That's that's on top of what's already being sent. So it's entirely false narrative to say that they're running out because this bill hasn't been passed. I think they're and I've said this before here, they're just what's happening now is they're in the same position they were before the counteroffensive. Before leading up to that counteroffensive, they were stockpiling ammunition. They weren't just shooting everything they got. They were stockpiling it for their big counteroffensive. And now they're back to where they were, just living hand to mouth, having to shoot whatever the U.S. and the rest of NATO sends as it arrives to shoot it because they're so low. But in the meantime, Russia has expanded their ammunition producing capabilities, so they're outgunned even more than they were prior to the counteroffensive. So I think that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, that's what most of the headlines are about. Basically, this thing is lost. People don't know, but this is already lost. Bill Burns, CIA guy, said this will be lost this year, apparently, unless we... Fred Kagan, the Kagan family, Institute for the Study of War, Newland's sort of extended family, said that this will be a permanent mark, like a mark of shame on U.S. security. But, it's just that apparently on paper, notwithstanding secret supplies from here and there, a billion here, a few, 6,000. The Germans sent 6,150 millimeter, 55 millimeter shells. Notwithstanding those, they haven't gotten aid from the U.S. for 6 months for the period of the Israel-Hamas conflict, basically, on paper. Yeah.
That's one of the biggest stories of the past couple weeks is how Ukraine is just so jealous of Israel, right? And how Ukraine feels like they're treated like the redheaded step vassal, whereas
what about us?
The Israeli vassal is getting total support. And man, we're shooting down everything that's heading towards Israel, et cetera, et cetera. Speaking of, go ahead.
I think they have a right to be upset. Biden will put
I kind of
US
understand
troops.
it. Yeah.
He'll put American fuelers, American planes, American assets on the line. He'll put the USA itself on the line for Israel. And it's risking retaliation directly from Iran against American forces. So that's Ukraine's got nothing. We've tiptoed around those Russian red lines, avoiding American casualties. Well, with Israel, we'll just throw everything on the table. Give us 1,000 U.S. SS Liberties. We don't care.
Yeah. Zelensky, Daddy likes you best.
Yes.
Yeah, one guy
Daddy
who
likes Israel best. I'm sorry.
One guy who made this beautiful list, the Times 100 most influential, you can see Yulia Navalnaya, submitted by Kamala Harris, and that's even better, right on the Time magazine front piece. But one guy who made it onto this list is Andriy Yermak, is I think the chief of staff of Zelensky, and he was the one demanding, that's the wording of the article, demanding same security guarantees as Israel has, saying they're not a NATO country. How come they get all this shit? Coalition Air Force, you got the Brits, the French, the fucking Jordanians, everybody assisting them. And what about us was a lot of the titles. And yeah, I understand where they're coming from. We were told all of these things. We'd win, we'd grind the Russians down. Holy shit. Doesn't look like we have a reliable ally. And it looks like Russia has some really reliable allies in Iran, in North Korea, in China. Interesting switch, eh?
Are you suggesting that the empire is in decline, Ben?
That's what Boris Johnson said.
I think. Go ahead.
No. What did you?
Well, you were gonna pop up. You popped up this Navalny's wife. Did you mention it? Or were we gonna discuss it? Or?
Oh, I just wanted to add that because it's absolutely hilarious that Zelensky is not on this list, but Yermak, his chief of staff, who is demanding.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Guarantees
so in the entire most influential people, Zelensky is not on there.
No, sir, he is not.
Wow,
he's
what a
off.
slap in his.
Imagine how he feels right now.
Two faces. So that's interesting. And then who was number one?
Oh, this has different categories.
Okay. Never mind. But that lady should not. I mean, she's just what they call a post turtle.
Yeah, Yolanda was in two categories.
Does anybody know? Can anybody explain a post turtle? My reference. No.
I know, but I'd like to hear about the turtle tank.
Well, it's just if you see a turtle on top of a fence post, it brings up some questions. You wonder who was the asshole that put the turtle there and why. So it's a post turtle.
Oh, the post turtle.
Just like somebody clearly put this turtle on this post. You don't know why, and they're obviously an asshole. So I don't know. That's a I'm not doing it justice, but that was my reference. I thought most people knew the term. So yeah, Yulia Navalny, definitely a post turtle. Okay, another post turtle I just saw in the media this week, and it's just a random thing, but some pretty Iranian expat living in LA, part of the Shah's regime that escaped
that
LA,
bimbo,
super rich.
Yeah,
this bimbo. She did something on TikTok, and then the whole, Western media jumped on it and immediately promoted her as some kind of a voice of, a voice of the Iranian people. So Piers Morgan had her on his show. The New York Post features her fucking TikTok on its front page, and she probably doesn't even speak Farsi. She was born in the U.S. She has a British accent. And she has these lips. It's fucking ridiculous. What the fuck is wrong with you?
The Yeomni Park, all of the expats, they start doing this crap. Yeah.
And it's just amazing. It's how the echo chamber, the establishment press can just determine what voices are presented to influence people. They determine who's an expert, who's saying something important. People actually saying important things are never allowed within a million miles of the platforms of the establishment press. I do credit Piers Morgan for being such a douche and still allowing some decent voices on his show, but he's a total douche. Hey, and I'm trying to watch this program, his most recent episode yesterday, where he had
Professor Marandi, right? Tehran University.
Yes, I haven't seen that episode yet.
I just saw clips, but he taught him a fucking lesson. It was beautiful. It's probably something similar happened between Xi and Scholz, but that's the level of this interview. It's beautiful.
So I'm going to check that out. That's going to be some entertaining viewing. What else, guys? We were having a little discussion pre-show about
the latest in
I don't know where
Iran.
the bakery in Del Norte is, but I know Del Norte County in California. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Yasha agrees it was pretty amazing. Again, I just saw short clips. Unfortunately, I had some unexpected work today, so I didn't really catch up with the news today. But that being said, in the morning, I did some quick scans and a couple of things. So basically, this was the, let's call it the birthday attack, right? Because Ayatollah Khomeini, he turned 85 today. It's his birthday, right? We don't know much, and I don't think we should draw conclusions at this point. But what we know, that in Isfahan and apparently maybe another site, all I could see was these little quadricopter drones, like 3 or 4. The Times of Israel immediately ran a big article saying attack, and they used a video from a strike in Syria 2 years ago, completely discredited. Ben Gvir, the fanatic, went on Twitter to say what all translators I could find translates to scarecrow, but the headlines were lame, and they started the don't tweet about this, don't tweet about. They didn't take what do you call it? Not accountability, but responsibility for the attack. Iran did not say they've been attacked. They say everything's normal in Isfahan. The US said that Israel attacked. I'm going to wait on this one. I don't think there's much here. What the response was from Iran was basically at the UN saying, don't do more shit or we'll attack instantly and seriously. But yeah, that's all I could gather about this in the morning. What did you guys find?
I think it has all the earmarks of mech. The anti-Iranianist.
Within Iran, yeah, it's also hundreds of kilometers from the border. Isfahan is central.
They're on the border of. They're on the board. They go back. They exist on the border in Iraq, right on the border with Iran. But they've been doing that kind of thing for years, so it could be them.
Yeah, it could be, but it's hundreds of kilometers from there. This is, by the way, Iran is like 75 times the size of Israel. Mountainous, huge country. This is really far.
Yeah, but they operate within Iran all the time.
Yeah,
doing spreading mayhem.
Yeah, and they're definitely a proxy of the West. Ian, you want to go with your analysis? I have a few things to say, but
well, Zero Hedge ran a headline saying they called the alleged Israeli retaliation strangely toothless and performative action, which I think sounds about right, because I remember those initial news reports, American-based news reports, all blowing it up as a major strike. And as far as I can tell, it was a few drones. You know, it was performative, and also at the same time, Israel kind of at the same time distancing themselves from it. So it's, I think, performative is a good word for
also
what happens.
Quadricopters are like the little recon drones. They're not like the big the scanning eagle. They're not the big fighting drones. And the only video I saw which did seem new was these things popping in the sky, based on not interceptor but just gun air defense.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I could find.
This was threatening to be the biggest news of the last couple days. You know, since our last episode, this was definitely the biggest news, because everybody was wondering, how is Israel going to respond to the Iranian response to the Israeli provocation of blowing up the embassy? So,
at the same time, the U.S. vetoed Palestine's.
That's the big
membership. News. So I think, and these kind of coincided with each other too. So I think.
Good point. That was also big news. I mean,
let me kind of try to tie them together, because a lot of the news was there's this. If you go on Twitter, X, Telegram channels, these big protests, celebrations basically of the Iranian strike all across the Ummah, all across West Asia, 1.8 billion Muslims, you know, and the Shia nation, who they've been taught is, you know, they're lesser, they're stupid mullahs and stupid. They didn't just attack the great Satan, but the small Satan, you know, Israel, and they successfully did it, and they were up in celebration. Apparently Saudi Arabia and the UAE is concerned about these huge protests in Amman, in Mr. Jordan's little backyard. Big concerns. After that, the headline switched to, and this was this morning is when I saw the UN vote, right? And apparently the US was lobbying all the UN members to come on, at least abstain. If you just don't let us be that isolated. Then there's clips of this, but I didn't prepare them. I mean, I can describe them because it's not that big a deal. But the moment that asshole from Israel started speaking, the Russian delegation left, and the Algerian delegation left the room, and then the vote took place. It was one veto, right? The US, 2 abstentions, the cowardly Swiss
UK
and
and
who-
Switzerland. UK.
Of
and
course, it
Switzerland.
was the UK. I was thinking, who else? Yeah, Switzerland and UK. Everybody voted yes, and therefore it was vetoed. And I think really this is the end of the UN, guys. It's going to be. There has to be a BRICS multilateral thing. They're so isolated. And afterwards, let's just see what this asshole. They put in the secondary asshole, not Linda Thomas Greenfield, the main UN envoy, right, from the US. The secondary guy had this to say.
The United States voted no on this Security Council resolution. Again, the United States continues to strongly support a two-state solution. This vote does not reflect opposition to Palestinian statehood. The United States voted.
How the hell does a vote against Palestinian statehood not reflect
Opposition to Palestinian.
opposition to
statehood, right?
Palestine? What the hell is this?
That was the thought I was having
Yeah.
before you put the clip up.
It's just
It's double think. It's the what's his name referred to as double think. You know, two opposite ideas at the same time. So I mean, I was gonna talk about my opinion of what Israel was up to with this attack, and I think there was a lot of pressure on Israel from the West not to escalate, but at the same time, Israel felt they had to do something. And so they thought, a smaller attack from inside of Iran was going to, check the boxes that they need to check. It wasn't going to be so provocative that it was going to elicit a response. There was a high likelihood that this small kind of attack wasn't going to elicit a response from Iran. And it wasn't going to upset the U.S. So I think it was exactly what it was. And one of the foreign minister of Israel or somebody just said lame, right? They went to Twitter and said
Ben-Gvir, the fanatic.
So I think that's where it stands now. I don't think Iran's going to respond. I don't think Israel has a reason to hit Iran now because they kind of just did. That was their response to Iran's attack. So right now we have a great situation where we'll be able to tell clearly what Israel's after. So if Israel hits Iran again, it'll be an obvious, overt effort just to, be provocative. And again, try and draw Iran into a war, try and draw the U.S. into a war. And that's not going to look good. Those optics are going to be very, very bad. So the status quo is great. Iran doesn't need to respond to that lame attack. And, I think things are looking good in the Middle East. And I think we've managed to avoid a huge escalation. And like I said, if Israel does provoke, attack again provocatively, that's not going to look good. That's just going to hurt them even more.
So you think this might be a lead up to a larger offensive, something?
It's possible. It's possible they were probing, trying to see, defenses and how Iran's, missile defense works. But this brings us into the discussion that we were having before the show. So there's a little bit of the divide along the analysis, regarding the analysis of what is really going on. And there's two schools of thought. There's schools of thought that I definitely share, that I believe that, the United States does not want a wider regional war. They are not looking to get pulled into an actual war against Iran, that they're opposing that. So we have an establishment consensus currently that opposes war with Iran. And then we have Israel thinking that they really, really, really need to pull the U.S. into a regional war with Iran. But there's the other school of thought says that everything that we're seeing right now is a calculated attempt to get the U.S. into a war with Iran while making it look like the U.S. doesn't really want a war with Iran.
True. Yeah. I mean, Carlo mentioned. Sorry for interrupting, but Carlo mentioned that he watched one of the latest Brian Beletic videos about that. What was that paper? 2009.
2009, Rand Corporation. No. Actually, it was a commentary on an earlier Rand paper, I think, from the 1990s. Yeah.
Okay.
So Berletic's definitely of that school of thought that believes that, nothing happens without the U.S. say so, and that what we're seeing now is a strategy to initiate a war with Iran, with the U.S., fighting Iran, but making it look like the United States really tries to avoid it.
Well, if Israel, I think that response was kind of interesting. It was so toothless. I think it's likely that there's a consensus to not have a regional war. Israel, Netanyahu get their tit for tat. We got the last word in. It's kind of childish, but it's equivalent of getting the last word in. But it's like on Facebook, you're arguing with someone and you want to get the last word in, but you don't want him to respond to it. So you just don't tag him. You just say a one word. Oh, okay.
So it's a quote
So
tweet.
you can say, so it's just basically, I think that's what we're seeing here. Israel, the consensus on both sides is that they don't want a regional war. So Israel did the bare minimum so they could say they did respond to it, but it's not enough to provoke Iran.
Ian, I would just say that I think Israel wants a regional war if the U.S. will fight on their side. But if the U.S. is not going to fight on their side, and I believe the U.S. has told them we will not fight on your side, that's why they don't want a regional war. But I think what they really do want is to draw the U.S. in and have a regional war, again, with the U.S. on their side. Carlo?
No, nothing precludes the Israelis from launching another strike. I mean, they won't do it in the Passover framework. I think they want to avoid that. I can't remember when Passover begins, but they could launch another strike.
April 30.
There's nothing precluding that.
I think if they did that, they would just look really, really bad. It would be a PR disaster because everybody knows that they're even now. There's going to be no justification.
Well, as one of our viewers commented, I think it was Favs, what a PR disaster Gaza is already. They're not concerned about PR disaster.
14,000
Israel is a walking PR disaster right now.
No, and they are for sure. And again, the media is actually, more than ever in my entire lifetime, they're allowing pro-Israel dissent. They're allowing, pro-Palestinian voices to be heard. And I mean, they're still totally biased, totally in the tank for Israel by and large. But the amount of decent coverage, the amount of voices that I'm seeing supporting Palestine is I haven't seen that in my lifetime. And that's good. And it's really bad for Israel. But
yeah, you can sense it even in the CIA media, which is the Washington Post, and they went back and covered with the full investigation piece, the death of Hind Rajab, the little girl who was in the car asking for her parents, asking for paramedics. And Israel allowed them to come and shot them one by one and ended the life of the little girl. And the other was Reuters, which went back to a December strike on in vitro fertility clinic called Al Basma, right? Where apparently 5,000, this was the title that was in Haaretz, which also did it, is 5,000 lives in one shell. Apparently 4,000 embryos and another 1,000 frozen specimens, eggs and sperm, were destroyed for people who tried to conceive. That's just absolutely horrific. But they're going back and showing these crimes, which is, I think, an interesting sea change.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then the other issue was, the other side of that is we've had a leaked report from the New York Times where the editors are instructing their journalists not to use words like genocide, ethnic cleansing, slaughter. There's certain. So I mean, you see both play out, but more and more you're seeing, some reporting that's not favorable of Israel. But at the same time, you're seeing the regular pro-Israel nonsense. Go ahead.
And see if the story that Ben is talking about got into the American press and was pressed. What would the evangelical community think about that, since their abortion stance in this country is that
pro-life guys
and eggs are inviolate. The pro-life guys. I mean, that should be an important story in the U.S. that Israel had done that. I'd like to interject just a little bit of humor into this. I really want to like George Galloway, and I've on and off I've been watching his programs and reading an article or two here and there. But I have to say what this program he had on recently with this guy he said is like a Nostradamus, predicts everything correctly. It had me rolling on the floor with laughter because he and Galloway and his guests were talking about this weekend the world was coming to an end. You know, that kind of hyperbole that gets you a lot of views and all that sort of thing. So they get through with like just this scary end of the world apocalyptic scene where, you know, Israel retaliates to Iran, Iran retaliates to the U.S. and blah blah blah, and then they go into this kind of quasi commercial because this guy that he has on, that's the Nostradamus, is selling gold futures, and I'm thinking, gee, why would I want to buy gold futures if I'm going to be a pile of ash on the floor, you know, within a few hours? What would be my interest in buying gold futures? And they did it without skipping a beat. It's not skipping a beat. And of course, Galloway had to get his usual slander in about wokeness and LGBTQ people, which I wish he wouldn't do because he's not at risk, but he's putting those people at risk, and they don't need that. And I don't know what can make them stop. And there was another show with what's a Glenn Deason show? Is that his name? And
he's not in
Jimmy
America.
Dore was on. Yeah, and well, whatever. It doesn't matter about America. I mean, they get killed all around the world, and Deason and Dore were doing the same thing. And then Dore, of course, he has to morph it in because I think he feels guilty because I think he knows he was complicit in murdering quite a few people with his attitude toward COVID, because he's a voice of authority and people listen to him, and it validates their notion. Well, I don't need the vaccine because these people are lying to me, and they keep doing that. And I could sense the Dore is really getting defensive. He's having an internal argument with himself, like, what did I do wrong here? Though he sounds like he's doubling down on all of it all the time, but he brings it up in any conversation. Gaza, COVID, Ukraine, COVID, petrodollar, COVID. You know, it's like it's haunting him, and I just wanted to get those two things out.
All right,
because I made notes anyway.
All right.
But yeah, that's it. That's me. That's my soapbox.
You know, I try and avoid, discussing COVID. It's pretty contentious and divisive, and it'll get you banned off of YouTube. But
still,
but it has energized and animated a lot of people, like Jimmy Dore, and a lot of people, on the left and the right have been really animated by it. And I did see that he was on Glenn Deason. I didn't watch that episode, but it did show up on my feed. And he looked different.
Yeah.
He had like a hat on. I was like, is that really Jimmy Dore? But I guess it was.
Yeah.
So where do we want to go? I mean, we did discuss, the most recent news, which was the U.S. veto of Palestinian statehood, while they say that they want a two-state solution. Those fucking liars. And we talked about, everybody was waiting to see how Israel would respond, and it was a lame response, but it was a good response because right now, everything is even, and any further response by Israel will look awful. What else is really percolating in people's brains that we want to? Yes. Go, Ben.
Oh, of course, I have an agenda to take this to Europe. Sorry, I'm here. And obviously, this latest, just the news of this latest attack also sent gold up like by 6 or 7% and Brent crude by 10%. So it did that. A lot of the European stocks were like crashing for a moment and then caught back up. So it had a terrible effect there. And this whole energy situation is interesting because we finally had an admission from Kristalina Georgieva. I don't know if she's the World Bank or the IMF chief, saying, well, this is really, really bad for Europe, but, not so bad for America. And, Europe, one guy got out, Olaf Scholz. He escaped to China to get scolded by the headmaster. He wanted, this is amazing. Like the US, I think, because that's who Scholz belongs to, sends the German chancellor to China to put pressure on China, to put pressure on Russia over Ukraine, and it completely failed, and he came away with nothing, right? In the meantime, there's something called PACE, which did 3 things this week, which is the Parliamentary Assembly for the Council of Europe, something like that. They ruled the the election of President Putin he's an illegitimate leader, and everybody should recognize that. The Orthodox Church is a propaganda outfit. They ruled to invite the so-called Kosovo into the Council of Europe. And I'm just looking for and that was based, by the way, on a Greek recommendation. I'm just thinking, what the fuck was the third? Because this is triumvirate, man. But maybe go based on those two. While the meantime, I try to find them. But
well,
these lackeys, man, they've gone nuts.
Most countries don't recognize Kosovo, right? That's like recognized by a handful of NATO countries.
Yeah.
As far as I know. So yeah, to suggest that Kosovo is the legitimate government.
10 countries around the world, that's it.
And President Putin is not a legitimate representative of Russia. It's just preposterous.
I found the third one, which is PACE has adopted. This is from Pravda, who got it from the actual the papers. Has adopted a resolution calling for the decolonization of Russia. Obviously, we've heard this quite a few times before. But Carlo, we have a comment for you. It's true. Judge Napolitano, in his sponsored streams, he also does that. You know, with
right.
I don't think we should name that because that's free advertising. But the sponsor, you know.
Buy that radioactive gold, yeah.
Well, you know, if you bought gold 30 years ago, it would be more or less the same price as it is now. If you bought $1,000 in gold 30 years ago, right now you would have $1,000 in gold. You know, it's not, the precious metals market is not a good place to invest money if you want to actually profit. But so that's why all these guys who push buy gold, push these scare tactics. So, you know, Iran and Israel are going to destabilize the world tomorrow. So you should buy gold through my website, of course.
Use the promo code 20%.
You know, they've been doing. I mean, the stick has not changed since Saddam's WMDs. You know, it's the same exact shtick now. In 2024 as it was in 2004. It's the same shtick.
At least we can say that we're not selling anything. Talking about metals, I wonder if you guys watch this one. We don't have to watch to the end, just until the price
This,
tag.
Mr. Secretary, is a bag of bushings.
Have you seen this?
This
No.
bag of bushings, stamped out by machinists, don't need a high school diploma. It's not anything high tech
Diploma.
about this. All of this bag is compliant with the FAA specifications. How much do you think the Air Force pays for this bag of bushings?
I don't know, Congressman.
$90,000.
There.
Oh, what?
There I see a kind of a
What?
problem. I had to look up what a bushing was. It's a basic little joint thing, a machine part, like mass things. And I thought that was very interesting because there's a lot of news about trouble with the Navy, trouble with the Brits are gonna send the Dragonfire laser weapon when it's ready to Ukraine. But you know, we're gonna sanction Chinese shipbuilding. We're going to sanction Russian metals. In the meantime, this is what the US MIC is dealing with. What do you guys think about that? I don't know what that should cost, but it looks like maybe $100 to me. Maybe.
I don't know really, but you're probably high on it with $100.
Sorry, maybe.
I do remember there were big congressional hearings decades ago about a $900 hammer, and it was famous. That became the exemplar.
Like an $800 toilet seat or something.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So now we went 10,000 times that high.
But I will say the toilet seat I think was going to be in a space shuttle or one of the
High
Apollo
tech
flights.
toilet seat.
So that could
It
sort
could
of be
be.
justified.
It
But
had to
the
be
hammer was just
aerodynamic, probably.
It was just we were doing some repairs in the house, and one of them was inside the wall, so it was free. But it's like, you can buy a hammer you could have bought a hammer at that time for $10, and they wanted $900 for it. So, yeah,
That's a constant,
been around for a long time.
It's a long-standing, criticism of waste, of government waste, and for sure the defense industry is a huge it's a huge hole that they constantly pour taxpayer money into, and it's not just taxpayer money. It's they create money out of thin air and dump that into that hole, which benefits all these rich military contractors, and it goes back to Smedley Butler. War is a racket, and it also goes back to the U.S. dollars, the world reserve currency. And as long as the dollar remains the world reserve currency, they have the luxury of doing that because there's always going to be a demand for U.S. dollars. But once the U.S. dollar role as the world reserve currency begins to give way a little bit, they're not going to be able to keep doing that. And so that's what BRICS is about. That's what we see happening. It's a long-term project, but we definitely see signs of it happening. And it's going to be good because it's going to weaken U.S. imperialism. It's going to weaken the West's ability to sanction other countries, to destroy other societies, and to bring pain and influence, governments to go against the interests of their own people to benefit Western imperialism. You guys know that.
Yeah, but imagine trying to build a battleship or a corvette if that was the price of these little joint elements. Holy crap. Of course they're in trouble. With 35 trillion in debt. I think that's the most recent.
But with the printing press, they can go 35 trillion. And if people don't understand what a fucking trillion is, people have no concept of what a trillion is. They don't even understand what a billion is.
I can't visualize it.
But again, the only way they can do that is because of U.S. dollar hegemony, within the global economic system. And once you lose that, you lose the ability to just print unlimited money.
And there comes the solution, because still more or less people are reliant on it. There's a bunch of sanctions. Obviously, Iran's drone program is under UK, US, and EU sanctions now, which I thought they've been doing forever. Anyway, they added new sanctions to it. Sanctioning Russian metals, aluminum, copper, a third one, right? Which goes straight into Taiwan, the largest player that can buy. Just into China. And now they're trying to sanction Iranian oil going to China, and then trying to reintroduce this monitoring mechanism over reshackle North Korea, which is basically free of sanctions at this moment. And what did sanctions do to Russia? We just had two big IMF reports, and a lot of news is about this, that Russia is getting bigger than all, what do they call it, advanced economies. So they don't count China, because it's always grew faster, but it's a developing economy. But it's growing faster than the US, the UK, France, all the big G countries at a pathetic pace. That's what sanctions did to Russia. Imagine what it will do to China. Just try. I mean, amazing that this is that after Marco Rubio, like a year ago, said we're going to lose our ability to sanction. That's where the world is going.
Yeah, that Marco Rubio quote crossed my mind as we were discussing these issues, because that's the worry. That's they see it coming. They know what's going on, and they don't know how to stop it. They're not smart enough. They're incompetent.
Lavrov recently said the same after seeing Boris Johnson. Yes, the West doesn't know what to do with this unstoppable change of multipolarity being ushered in.
And with this little hiccup of a strike by Israel on Iran, oil went up 4%.
Yeah.
That benefits Russia. It benefits all the oil producers. Venezuela.
I forgot Venezuela. Yes, they elected Maduro, re-elected them. So now, based on democratic backsliding, their oil industry is under sanction again, of course. While his little is that a neighbor? No, it's further down. Milei, do you know the latest move Milei does?
He wants to join NATO.
Jesus Christ! Yes, an honorary or a special member. It's the wild hairs in this world, man.
He's going to join NATO and then demands the UK return the Falklands to him. It's 12-dimensional chess. He's, it's quite clever.
Yeah, I'd cry if it wasn't so funny.
I mean, maybe Britain will give back the Falklands. Like maybe they'll, the U.S. will pressure him to make that concession in order to maintain, Milei in charge, so he can, appease his people and show that, hey, I did something for you guys. I got us the Falklands back. I know inflation at 5,000%. They're not going to do it. I don't think so.
Well, I have to say, Sean Fu had a fascinating video, and I got to say, I had to watch parts of it 2-3 times, and I still didn't completely understand.
Which one?
But Milei apparently has a plan where he somehow is going to buy yuan what's the Nimimbi? Is that what it's called? The
Renminbi?
Chinese currency, and convert it into petrodollars. And I didn't quite. I can't do the details. I recommend anybody who's interested look up Sean Fu's videos, and maybe you have a better grasp of economics than I do. But it was. I don't know whether it would succeed or not, or whether it was just a wacky scheme. I think it really is interesting that maybe one of the few countries that's actually in the North Atlantic would, in NATO, Britain would suddenly become a partner with Argentina in NATO. That'd be interesting. I mean,
Yeah, I'd love
fascinating.
it. I'd love it.
They'd have to party together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Sean Fu is one of the Asian man knows economics, one of the few economic commentators who makes perfect sense. And just the outlines, I don't understand what this, there was this year-long, like a yuan something exchange deal with China, which they immediately suspended when he said, I'm not going to join BRICS, fuck off. And basically he's trying to get back that deal. I think that's what this is about, but I don't have a firm understanding of how that deal works either.
Yeah, I mean, the economic reality is that if
230-40%, that's the current inflation. I mean, there's videos of people dumpster diving in Argentina. So
it was a very public and in-your-face split. Milei said, "I'm done with the dictatorships. I hate Russia. I hate China. We're going to go full on into the West. We're fully in the camp of the democracies, and we can't stand the dictatorships." And so he did. He broke a deal that they had an economic arrangement with China that he had. But now, due to the economic reality, he's realizing that it's going to be disastrous for Argentina. And so he's working with China, and they're pursuing a particular economic arrangement, which he loudly denounced previously. But it's the economic reality. Yeah, it is difficult to understand. That's the as deep as I can get into how that works. But Sean Fu is great. I recommend him. He's in Singapore, and he's got some great analysis. He also sells the gold, but don't let that dissuade you, because he's got really good geopolitical analysis. He's got a big platform too. We'd like to have him on the show, but yeah, we got to get some more viewers, get our viewership up before we can attract some of these great guests. So everybody like and share. Tell your friends to start watching our Tuesday and Friday episodes, so we can get on some big name guests that otherwise look at our viewership, say, a few hundred views. Yeah, we're not gonna waste our time.
Yeah, I just want to add about Argentina, because we neglect it all the time when we talk about murdering political dissidents. In 1976, the United States was instrumental in overthrowing the Peronist government of Argentina, and after that, an estimated at least 30,000 Argentinians were murdered by the junta that came into power, with the support of the United States, especially the support of the Central Intelligence Agency, and their torture and terrorist techniques, and since Uruguay shares a border with Argentina, Dan Mitrione, who was known as the American torture artist of Uruguay, was also involved in the torture of people in Argentina. So I think when we mention all the U.S. perfidy and murder around the world, I at least tend to not.
It's a century of it, yes.
Yeah,
and I mean, you started your history. I would go back even earlier, and it probably goes back even earlier than that. But I would go back to the end of World War II, where the U.S. facilitated the transfer of numerous Nazis into Argentina. I mean, they went everywhere. They went to Canada, they went to the U.S., but a large contingent went to Argentina, and there's probably a reason for that. There was probably a long-standing, fascist element within Argentina that made the Nazis feel right at home, and it was a great fit. But that's the same contingent of people who they rely on to, like you said, overthrow the Perón government, Now they're getting Milei in charge, who's just going all in with the Nazi West. So yeah, there's a very long history of it.
Maduro already called him a Nazi. Good on him, by the way.
Yeah,
He
Maduro
called me
had
later.
a great quote, just hitting the Malay thing on the head. I forget exactly what it was. I put it on my Facebook, but he defined Malay to a T. just a lapdog for the empire, basically.
Basically, I want to respond because, it's been at least 80 years, right? Since the US had free reign over, well, not free reign, but in the backyard, definitely Latin America. And at least 30 years or 35 since it had free reign all over the globe. And that's the beautiful thing about this, that it's changing. I mean, even tiny places like Georgia are introducing their foreign agent bill. And from Borrell to Charles Michel to Ursula, everybody is commenting this is going to stifle your road to European freedom. And this is backtracking. And then this guy, the president is a US puppet. But the prime minister isn't, and he defended it, saying we have to stop the Ukrainization of this place. To which Kuleba had, oh, well, how dare you? What we're talking about is the Russification of Georgia, and they had this public thing. And apparently, those protests bought by, 80,000. No, I don't actually recall the number, but many tens of thousands of non-governmental organizations, who pay the bills of these people. They're starting to drain away. There's like just a couple of hundred people left in front of Parliament, small places. Africa, I read, this isn't Stephen Bryan, but another Asia Times article, that Russia is giving a survival package to regimes and kicking the US and Australia out. And I'm glad someone fucking mentioned Australia, because people don't think it's an imperialist power, but they have mining concerns all over Africa and Europe. Mount Mechek, in our hometown here in Pitch, all the uranium in this fucking mountain belongs to Wild Horse Energy, an Australian concern, and nobody's mining it. It's just bought by them. So I'm glad that's happening too. Germany also has interest. They don't think of this. Everybody knows France is in Africa, but Germany, well, I mean, the rubber for the BMW tires, that's all Africa. There's a lot of this stuff, and that's upending. I mean, the latest is Chaz, who just finally signed a document saying, US, all your puppies, just go home, get out. They're being kicked out of there. They're being humiliated in Ukraine.
So,
all of NATO is. And
basically,
Iran just humiliates.
Too fast, and you hit on too many things, Ben.
I do that.
There's a lot there, and it's all good.
But that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's a big global shift in everything, which I'm really excited for.
So I mean, we were expecting Chad would be the next kind of popular revolution that would overthrow that U.S. friendly government. But instead, they saw the writing on the wall. They saw which way the wind was blowing. And so they got ahead of that before they were overthrown. And they're taking their own steps to make sure that, they're not just seen as outright, Western puppets. So that's good. If Chad is initiating that process of getting back their own sovereignty without having to have a revolutionary government overthrow them. I mean, that's great. Go ahead.
That's what's picking up pace, you see. Alex Christoforou of the Duran described, Boris Pistorius described Putin as Hitler. And he said the psychological background is obviously jealousy, because he's actually sovereign. He can make sovereign decisions, and someone who can't make sovereign decisions, as in Germany, is always going to be jealous of the other. And, it must be hard being Ebola Tinubu, in Nigeria, which is a large economy in Africa right now, looking all around and shit, these guys are getting their sovereignty back, which there was an article saying the big letters from economists around the world saying this rise in sovereignty is a real threat for global growth. We're really worried about this. It's happening, guys.
Yeah. Well, we didn't spend enough time with Georgia, so let's go back to Georgia. Again, we have these non-governmental organizations that are, their job is to, further U.S. interests, imperialist interests, and to deny the sovereignty of particular societies that they operate in. And so, Georgia, at least there's some sane people in Georgia who look at Ukraine and say, we don't want that happening to us. As much as we hate Russia, as much as we are pro-West, we need to be realistic. We don't want our society destroyed. And so we need to have a bit of sovereignty, and we can't allow these NGOs to pull us and push us into being the next Ukraine, which is definitely what would be on the table. and it's on the table in the Philippines. It's on the
Philippines,
table in Taiwan, and
Take
it's on the
notes,
table
take
in
notes.
Japan. So all these places, as much as their governments and their people are being, led by the nose through this media propaganda apparatus to embrace the U.S. and to hate China and to hate Russia, they've got to stand up and embrace their own sovereignty and realize that's what the U.S. has in store for you. And it's just, the whole idea that that these people, that there are true believers in Western exceptionalism and want to embrace it. I mean, that's a problem. But even with that problem, at least these people understand that, we don't want to be the next Ukraine. And so that's a start. We can start there with some serious rational people realizing it's not going to be in our interest to be the next Ukraine. And then we can work on this idiocy of thinking that, the West and their, way of life has everything all figured out, and that's what we want to start, gravitating towards.
And so what do the NGOs do? They try to influence the passing of this legislation by getting out on the street.
So
they prove their own. They prove their own crippling presence. But let's hear from Ian. Ian's been quiet.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ian.
Ian,
you gotta shut us up and just talk over us.
Let me prime you on that, because I saw a very interesting exchange between two Russian accounts on Twitter X, and it was amazing, saying for 20 years these NGOs have been here in Russia and they spent a huge amount of money, to actually make a big living, which all went down the drain. Over to you. Because
Will
I
Johnson
was
is calling somebody a liar.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm just trying to stir the pot.
Oh,
Ian.
sorry.
Uh-oh. Oh, Ian, you're muted. You're muted.
I don't know. My microphone turned off for some reason. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Better. So NGOs are kind of, well, it's hard to gauge exactly how big of an influence are, because you can look up the number of NGOs registered in, say, Russia or Kazakhstan or Georgia and say, oh, well, this small country has, 20,000 or however many NGOs. It's hard to say, because especially in the post-Soviet period, NGOs were used in the same way that in the USA we use sole proprietorship. So if you want to set up a business for anything, it'd be convenient to set up an NGO. So I've had that pointed out to me by people from ex-Soviet states that it can be misleading to look at a country and see just the raw number of NGOs. A lot of them are just a random plumber or a writer who wanted a sole proprietorship to set up an NGO, and a lot of them aren't active anymore. They're just on the books. They're not even staffed by anyone anymore. So, but on the other hand, yes, the influence of foreign NGOs is huge, and I think that's particularly concerning for a country like Georgia. And their president, her name is a woman. I don't remember her name off the top of my head. I was reading her biography actually a couple days ago.
I can try to say it.
She was, I mean, it's a 2-second Google search. I can't remember her name. But
Zora Beach, it contains bitch. It's Zora Beachvili, I think. I just read that.
Yes, that sounds right. Yeah. So it's, she's French. She never really, as far as I could tell, at least according to her bio, it doesn't seem like she even set foot in the country of Georgia until 2004. When she was born in like 1952. So her whole life up into her middle age, she did not even set foot in Georgia until she came as the ambassador for France. And then after her tenureship as the ambassador of France ended, she just stepped straight into Georgian politics, which is kind of amazing. So, just imagine this person in her 50s showing up to your country and then eventually becoming your president. I mean, it wouldn't even be legal in most legitimate states. It's not legal in Russia. It's not legal in the USA. I think it's not legal in most real countries, honestly, for a foreign-born citizen to become president of your country. You have to be a native-born. You have to actually be a native-born citizen of that country
very
to be their
suspicious,
president.
if you ask me. And it reminds me of that post-turtle reference I made earlier. But
yes, so it's like it's like a turtle on sitting on the post. It's like there's this random French woman who's the president of Georgia. You're like, huh?
Yeah.
And they don't publicize it. They don't talk about that.
literally nailed, hit the nail on the head is what they say, right? I just recently discovered that the big opposition at the European Parliament to Orban, the Hungarian liberal opposition, is chaired by a couple. One is Czech Kotolin. She was born in Montreal, I think, and her hubby was born in New York. Okay, very simple, but they made a really good living off of these pouring in money. And all this law says in Georgia is if 20% or more of your income comes from outside the country, you have to declare it. That's it. And they're in an uproar. The entirety of the EU is in an uproar against it. But I want to make kind of, I could be wrong on this, but a little bit of sort of geographical analysis, right? There's this big port, Sevastopol, Black Sea Fleet, you know. And what is the last one? Catherine's big, Odessa, right? The crown jewel of Ukraine. That was supposed to be a British NATO port. They really invested in the infrastructure of that nation. And I think they're the ones panicking over losing the Black Sea. Because if you look at the Black Sea, I don't have a map. The western region called Dacia, parts of Hungary, Romania, Moldova. That's where there's a big offensive to kind of get an anti-Russia sentiment. And then there's the East Coast, which is the South Caucasus, where we have Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan. And right now, the Russians said, fuck you. We're leaving Nagorno-Karabakh, the little independent region within. We're not going to do the peacekeeping. If you want to fight it out, you fight it out, and there's no more Armenia. Both of these little things around it are like the largest NATO base is being built on the Black Sea coast in Romania, right? It's like, shit. We lost a lot, but we can't lose the Black Sea. That's my thought around all of this. Really desperate shit going in this region.
I think it has less to do with, because NATO is not going to lose the Black Sea. They have Romania. I think it's more about locking Russia out rather than keep locking NATO into the Black Sea. I think it has more to do with
Russia from dominating it. That would be the
because if they could build a NATO base, hypothetically build a NATO base in Odessa, that would basically neutralize the effectiveness and security of Sevastopol. If you look at how they're geographically related to each other. But yeah, so it's not, and you know, it's like what naval forces does NATO really have to put in the Black Sea to begin with? It's just like, you know, it's the British, Britain is still acting like an empire after they no longer have an empire. You know, Britain was obsessed with the Black Sea in the 19th century, and even when they have no empire,
charge of the Light Brigade.
Charge of the Light Brigade, which they're still salty about to this day. So yeah, it's more about turning the Black Sea into a NATO lake, like they boast about doing with
the Baltic now.
The original hope with the overthrow of Yanukovych in 2014, I think it was to definitely take Sevastopol and make it a NATO Navy base. They wanted to kick Russia out. They knew that, you know, Crimea was part of Ukraine, and they thought if they get in a compliant government, they're just going to end that agreement that allowed Russia to station 20 or 40,000 troops in Crimea, and then they could turn Sevastopol into a NATO military base. And that was something that, of course, Russia was never going to allow. And that's why you had the referendum. And overwhelmingly, the Russian people in Crimea said, we want to be part of the Russian Federation. But I think that was their big hope. And that was probably what a lot of people were promised. And that's why Obama went along with this regime change, because it just looked like, yeah, we got to get this done. But,
hindsight is 2020, 10. I don't know how that works, but that was 2014, right? The next year, Russia went into Syria and saved Bashar al-Assad. So that's when they finally, I think, permanently lost Putin and Russia. That's when the actual resistance began all around the world. It's been 10 years. Very interesting.
Well, they definitely got angry, and they decided, hey, we're really going to get him now. This motherfucker is going to get got.
Yeah.
He saved Assad. He took Crimea. No, he's got to go. And who's got to go?
That's the meme. Yeah.
I thought that last comment was interesting. I know nothing about.
Yeah, no. Brian knows his stuff. I know from Facebook, and so I believe he's got his history down here. But yeah, I'm no expert either, Carlo.
Mm-hmm.
So the Ukrainization, the Ukrainization, is this big hope, big push, the Hail Mary pass of Western imperialism to get all these societies to, sacrifice themselves in order to maintain Western imperialism and U.S. global hegemony, isn't going to work. It worked in Ukraine. Fucking stupid Ukrainians. They let it fucking work. You fucking idiots. Is it going to work in the Philippines? Can it work in Japan? Can it work in Taiwan?
The idea is spreading. That's the important takeaway. It didn't spread earlier. It was the Putin. They're still saying there's enemies within. Apparently, the GOP Congress people are the enemies of Ukraine, letting people die. There's enemies within in here in the EU. Apparently, AfD and people are Putinists, but that's beginning not to work. And this is the Putin law in Georgia. The idea that Hungary passed, that Russia passed, and Georgia is now passing is we should be sovereign and we shouldn't let foreign interests rule out basically our governance. And I really hope this should be a trend that picks up. That is my hope.
And let's look at the hypocrisy of it. I mean, let's just look at the hypocrisy. Let's look at the double standard between what the West pretends to uphold, the principles they pretend to uphold about non-intervention and sovereignty and, and peace, and these Western principles that they pretend to uphold. Meanwhile, they hate democracy, and they're all about intervening in other people's societies to bend them to the will of, the wealthy imperialists.
When did the U.S. pass the FARA Act, the Foreign Agent Registration Act? Pre-World War II, 1938, just so you know.
That's right,
It's modeled. It's modeled on that, but do as I say, not as I do, is the message of the rules-based order.
Yeah, for sure. And then Georgia's law, I heard they're trying to kick out the NGOs, and they're modeling this law based on the law that exists in Russia. Ian, has that law been effective? Is there a Russian law?
The first foreign agents bill was actually implemented by the most democratic country on earth, the USA. So, I think all of these foreign agent bills
high democracy.
Are actually pretty similar. Like if you compared what is the difference between the Russian foreign agents bill and the American foreign agents bill, they're probably all very similar to each other. The idea is if you are advocating for a foreign interest, or you are getting significant amounts if you're being paid by a foreign interest, you are required, it's not necessarily wrong or illegal for you to do that, but you have to register and show that you're a paid advocate for a French interest or a Russian interest or a Polish interest or whatever country you're working for. It doesn't even matter what it is, a company or a government or an NGO or whatever. But so, of course, they're effective because the USA didn't. And this panic is just it's hypocrisy. It is of course hypocrisy because the USA does it, and most of these European countries that whine about it. And when there was those riots last year, was it last year? No, it was the year before. It was the end of 2022. I remember that when they were first pushing the foreign agents bill in the Georgian parliament.
Yeah.
I saw people on Facebook like, oh, we should have another maiden. Like it was amazing to see these young European people openly saying that on Facebook. Like, oh, we should have a maiden in Georgia because they're trying to push a foreign agents bill. It's farce.
Yeah, no, there's panic. People are terrified that Georgia is not gonna kick out or at least have them register. And that's gonna really apparently threaten their power to influence the government, influence the society into a pro-Western, into doing pro-Western things. And so they're terrified about that. And good on Georgia.
Good on them. By the way, Georgia is like two Budapest. It's like almost 4 million people. Very, very small country, but it's on the north-south transportation corridor, which both Iran, China, and Russia are
they can benefit.
advocating.
They can benefit from throwing the imperialists under the bus and going in with the rational actors, Russia, China, Iran.
Branko, to answer your question, I know about the Hungarian Bureau for Sovereignty, which we recently created, and you don't just get registered, but you also can't be in political office. You're barred from that. And if you're a media organization, you have to be very upfront about. Basically, you're going to lose support. Saying upfront, we get a lot of net money. We get a lot of that's how that works, as far as I know.
That's a great answer. I didn't know that. That's good info.
Hey, let's break it up with a laugh. Check this out.
Okay.
Are you ready to choose freedom over democracy? Because that's America.
Yes. One more time.
One more time. Sorry.
Are you ready to choose freedom over democracy? Because that's America.
Yes.
Third time.
Are you ready to choose freedom over democracy? Because that's America.
Yes.
That's America.
Hey, did you see that he was trying to get Israel to not bomb Haifa?
Yes, yeah, which is their own port. He's great.
He's a lot of fun.
Yeah. He called Yulia Navalnaya Yolanda. He called Queen Rania of Jordan Rihanna. It's amazing. Rihanna. He's Gaff Central.
But I don't know the context of that. But yeah, I mean, you know, the U.S. again always claims that they promote the values and they respect the principles of freedom and democracy. That's what the U.S. is about. Of course, it's totally the opposite. I don't know why he's saying we need to choose between the two now, but
because that's what America is.
It probably is just a gaffe. But yeah, America doesn't stand for either, and they haven't for a very long time. Everybody should know that.
I think people should be free from democracy, is the way it's practiced now. Yeah.
Oh,
I agree with the statement.
I agree with that too. I also want to add, you're the resident ninny alert guy, but these young idealistic Europeans who work for little NGOs and they're going to travel to Paris and get into the nice restaurants, they're the idiots. They're the fucking idiots of Europe. A lot of damage is on their hands in the past 30 years. Just wanted to add that.
I see you're queuing up another video, Ben, but I don't want to, I mean, we don't have to go to it. I don't know.
The thing is, the Israel stuff that we talked about earlier, the genocide in Gaza, people are having really difficult times in leadership positions, especially those not really elected. You know, Joe Biden can't get away from hecklers and people who say genocide Joe. And I just wanted to add that it's not just America anymore, which is why I added this. It's an interesting thing. And of course, she just...
Thank you very much, Ms.
She just stands there, frozen smile, until the person is removed.
She looks like...
It's a shit-eating grin. It's a shit-eating grin like she just drank a whole bunch of baby blood.
That's basically it. So anyway, I really like that these people can't just be in their little media bubble saying, I'm the hero of Europe. They are refrigerators and whatever microchips thing. They're getting a big backlash.
So far away from anything that approaches justice. And yet it's the best we have. It's the most satisfying feeling we can get these days, even though it's a million miles away from any sense of justice. But yeah, at least we have that. At least they, get confronted with their evilness.
My favorite clip is Murkowski. I can't remember her first name. Former senator of the United States. She was getting an award from Chevron. And all hell broke loose.
Oh, let me guess it, like a Green World Ecology Award or something.
Probably something like that. I don't know what the substance of it was, but there was an all-out riot, and a whole bunch of people were pushing each other around, and they tumbled off the stage. It's really kind of an interesting GIF. I mean, it got pretty hot there, so I guess we don't have it, but.
She's one of those conservative Democrats.
Yes. So maybe we can call it up. It's very entertaining. Reminds me a lot of things that were happening.
Ian, did you want to say something about von der Leyen before I interrupted you? You're happy to see that, right? You're glad to see a smidgen of anger in these people's face outside of their, echo chamber.
I think she doesn't care. I mean,
Yeah,
why would
she doesn't.
Well,
Yeah.
she would rather not be confronted with that, I'm sure. She wants to, in her mind, think that the people love her and that she's doing the right thing.
Well, it's like Taylor Swift outside, and there's some creepy fan who's obsessed with her, gets dragged away by security. It's the same thing. I'm sure it's the
Maybe.
same. It's just
I
like you
hope
get some
not.
guy who's shouting nonsense at you, then he gets dragged away by security. Who cares? I'm sure she does not care.
Let me think if I can say this. I think she and people like her should get the full Mussolini treatment in Minecraft.
In Minecraft, yes.
That's a reference that goes over my head.
He was
so
hung
you
upside
don't
down
get-
on the people's. Yep.
You say in Minecraft so you don't get banned from YouTube for
Yes.
advocating
Okay.
Nazi things. You can say,
We're not talking real life. We're not talking
I
real
think,
life.
right.
No.
I think she should get the JFK treatment in Minecraft.
Yes.
Well, tarring and feathering. I mean, can we advocate for the tarring and feathering of these
In
politicians
Minecraft, yes.
In
selling
Minecraft.
people out? I mean, it doesn't kill them. I think in real life, I don't know. We'll see if that gets us booted off of YouTube. But so guys, I'm an hour and 15 minutes in. Ian, you're gonna get with me after the show. We're gonna figure out how to broadcast our program to other platforms.
Yes.
Is there anything else that we want to discuss? I hope to have a fifth guest. These are our 4 panelists, our regular panelists, but we hope to have a guest on Tuesday. But we also want to increase our viewership. We want to broadcast to some other platforms. So we're going to be working on that. Any other issues before we wrap it up? I know.
Yeah.
Okay. I know I was arguing with Carlo once he left last episode's show, and I thought I was going to win, but that's because I underestimated who I was arguing with. So we continued our argument over the days off, but it's a little difference of opinion on the old president of the Philippines.
I thought about that a little bit. The difference between Bukele and Duterte is and this may speak to the whole notion of political prisoners. Was Duterte just killed people? So when you're dead, you can't say,
Yeah.
"Look, I'm just a politician. I'm not a drug smuggler." And but Bukele, he's got a judicial process in place, and he's going back and taking a look at some of the people he arrested, and they're still alive. So that's a huge difference. If you're dead, it's hard to plead your case. Look, I'm just a political prisoner. I'm not a drug smuggler. I'm laying on the floor bleeding. I bled out. My eyes are staring emptily at the wall, opposite wall. But that's the only thing I wanted to say. I was watching African Stream before we came on, and
Okay.
I didn't get very far into it. But this young couple, Christopher Weaver and Satari, the wife Satari is Iranian, and she's living just 20 minutes, she said, from where the drone strikes were reportedly to have occurred. And she said she didn't hear anything. So that
we just don't have any confirmation, do we?
And that's a on the ground confirmation of what we've been talking about. Thought that was interesting. So, but
in the end,
anyway,
good,
yeah.
Good final thoughts. I don't know if Ian has something I'd like to end with. This guy that Politico, in their deep search for copium, found, and the title was "Meet Russia's Christian Soldier Who Wants to Oust Putin," and it's called Caesar. That's the call sign or something, not the real name. And this is the stuff that they tell their audience to believe. This is what he said: "I'm an Orthodox Christian, a truly Russian man, not Soviet. And I couldn't just sit and watch what was happening with this criminal war and not do anything. When we have enough forces, we will liberate a whole Russian region. We will set up government, the rebellion will grow, and we will move on to the other regions until we march on Moscow." People reading this believe this is the Free Russian Legion.
Ian, be careful. Be careful.
Right.
Neo-Nazis. I think Russia is scared shitless of this guy, isn't it? But people believe this crap. This is Western news, Politico, by the Axel Springer, the German media group.
Everybody
you're
wants to
familiar
go to
with
the
this,
trough too. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Billy Bob.
Well, I mean, I was going to ask Ian to comment on, these they try and, position themselves as pro-Russians. They're pro-Russian Russians, and they oppose the Russian government. Like, how big of a following? How popular are they? How powerful are they? Are you worried that they're going to be overrunning Moscow soon?
Well, so far they haven't. They've apparently gotten close a few times. So, haven't seen them yet.
I think they have about as much influence in Russia as this chick.
Yulia Navalny.
Oh yeah, no, it's a joke. I mean, it's 1,000% hyperbole, and it's just preposterous. Okay, so we will reconvene on Tuesday, and I will have a special guest, but I'm not going to say who it is just yet. All right, and thanks for watching all the comments. We really appreciate the comments, and yeah, try and like and share. We're trying to get a few more eyeballs on the program. Thank you very much, and we'll see you Tuesday.